The Volange vessel materialized from the darkness with the sudden impact of a blade. Its terrifying splendor was undeniable, its hull sheathed in silver scales, its weaponry glowing with a soft blue luminescence. This 3-kilometer Leviathan traversed space with the unassailable confidence of a predator that had never experienced apprehension. Within its confines, Overseer Maltic observed the small blue world below from a vast observation portal. New Bizen, as the humans called it, an insignificant globe at the fringes of known space, home to 400,000 of these peculiar, delicate beings. Maltic had previously studied humanity. He perceived them as nascent, vulnerable, and imprudent. Their interstellar journeys had begun only 2 centuries prior, whereas the Valaran Dominion had dominated this sector for 3 millennia. This, he mused, would be effortless. Turning to his communications officer, Maltic's scales shifted from silver to a deep purple, a color signifying contentment among his kind. Transmit the standard communique. Grant them 72 hours. On the planet beneath, Ambassador Taiho meticulously reviewed data in his office. A man of 63, his gray hair and weary eyes bore witness to a lifetime of experience. Before his diplomatic career, he had served 3 decades in the United Earth Navy, fighting in the First Contact Wars, when the Qatari Empire obliterated 3 human worlds before intervention was possible. He had lost his wife on one of those scorched planets. Now his days were filled with alien parleys and tea. It was a monotonous existence, yet he preferred its tranquility. The door opened, admitting his aide, Yuna, a sharp-eyed, nimble-fingered woman of 28, assigned to Taiho 2 years prior, straight from military intelligence. Though she rarely smiled, Taiho nonetheless found her agreeable. "Sir, we have an issue," she announced, placing a datapad on his desk. Taiho picked it up, his expression unwavering, but his grip on the device tightened. "The Valaran Dominion," he murmured. "I wondered when they would notice us. They demand unconditional surrender, all resources, all territory, all people under their authority. Failure to comply, they threaten, will result in orbital annihilation of the colony." Taiho set down the datapad and slowly sipped his tea. Outside his window, the sun dipped below the horizon of the capital city. 400,000 souls inhabited this world, families with children, elders seeking peaceful retirement, young couples forging new lives. "How many ships do they have in orbit?" he inquired. "1. A diplomatic vessel, yet armed sufficiently to raise every city on the planet." Taiho nodded deliberately. "They send 1 ship because they believe 1 is sufficient. They assume we will be afraid." "Should we be afraid, sir?" Yuna asked. Taiho regarded her for a prolonged moment. Then a smile, devoid of pleasantness, touched his lips. The smile of an old warrior recalling humanity's capacity for wrath. "No," he declared. "They should be." He rose and approached his communication console, his fingers dancing across keys, inputting codes he had committed to memory 2 decades ago, codes he had prayed would never be necessary. "What are you doing?" Yuna queried. "I'm sending a message to Earth, to United Earth Command." "What kind of message?" Taiho completed his typing and pressed send. He then turned back to the window, watching the last vestiges of daylight vanish from the sky. "The kind that heralds a storm." 12 light-years distant, deep within the heart of human territory, Admiral Ju sat in her quarters aboard the UE Indomitable. At 51, her black hair was cropped short, her eyes ceaselessly vigilant. She had commanded the First Fleet for 7 years, never suffering a single defeat. She was at dinner when the message arrived. Her personal console chirped, prompting her to set down her chopsticks and read. The message was terse, 3 words and a set of coordinates. Protocol Aegis, New Bizen. Ju scanned it twice, then rose, crossed to her door, and activated the intercom. "Captain Doyan, report to my quarters immediately." 2 minutes later, her executive officer, Don Hune, arrived. 40 years old, tall and composed, his patience bespoke a past life diffusing explosives before joining the fleet. Admiral Ju handed him her datapad. "Protocol Aegis has been activated." Hune read the message, his face paling. "New Bizen. That's a civilian colony. Who would threaten a civilian colony?" "The Valoran Dominion. According to Ambassador Taiho, they've given us 72 hours to surrender or face annihilation." Hune was silent for a moment, then looked up at his admiral. "What are your orders?" Ju moved to her window. Beyond, the stars glittered, cold and remote. Somewhere out there, an alien empire had perpetrated a grave error. They had menaced human civilians. They had threatened children. Over 60 years of clandestine preparation, humanity had forged the most formidable military force the galaxy had ever witnessed. Hidden shipyards in asteroid fields, secret bases in lifeless systems, weapons capable of fracturing planets, and shields strong enough to withstand stars. All concealed, all awaiting the day someone would be foolish enough to threaten humanity again. That day had arrived. "Transmit the mobilization order to all fleet elements," Ju commanded, her voice cold and hard as steel sheathed in ice. "Every ship, every fighter, every soldier. I want the full Armada assembled at Rally Point 7 within 48 hours. "The full Armada, Admiral? That's over 800 ships." "I am acutely aware of the number, Captain." Ju turned to face him, her eyes burning with controlled fury. "The Valorans believe they can intimidate our people with one ship. They assume we will negotiate. They assume we will plead." She picked up a photograph from her desk. A young woman with a radiant smile in a garden on a world that no longer existed. A world the Qatari had incinerated 40 years prior. "They're mistaken," Ju whispered. "Profoundly mistaken." She replaced the photograph and adjusted her uniform. "Prepare the fleet, Captain. We are poised to impart a lesson the galaxy will never forget." And across 17 star systems, human warships began to stir. The message traversed distances, defying the laws of physics, relayed through hidden stations in empty space, past dormant moons and forgotten asteroids, reaching every corner of human territory. 3 words every United Earth Navy officer had trained for, yet hoped never to receive. Protocol Aegis, mobilize. At mining station Hammer 6, Captain Minho was engaged in a card game with his crew when his communicator buzzed. He read the dispatch, and the cards slipped from his grasp. Within 10 minutes, his destroyer was energizing its engines, breaking orbit. In the asteroid belt of the solar system, colossal doors opened in rocks that had appeared lifeless for decades. Ships emerged sequentially, shedding years of accumulated dust. These were the hidden vessels, the secret fleet no alien had ever witnessed. Battleships painted black to blend with the void, carriers teeming with fighters that had never engaged in true combat. Dreadnoughts so colossal they distorted light around them. Admiral Ju observed incoming reports from her command throne aboard the Indomitable. Her tactical display showed green dots materializing across the map, each representing a ship answering the call. The numbers ascended steadily. Captain Doyan approached with a datapad, his face pallid with what might have been shock, or perhaps awe. "Admiral, current count is 612 vessels. More are still arriving." "Good. And the Warang Division?" "They're requesting deployment. All 12 special operations teams." Ju nodded. The Warang were humanity's most elite soldiers, trained for years in conditions that would annihilate ordinary individuals. They could fight in zero gravity, in toxic atmospheres, within the burning cores of enemy ships. If the fleet was the hammer, the Warang were the knife. "Inform them they will have their opportunity," she stated. Throughout the fleet, crews readied for war. Engineers meticulously checked weapon systems, maintained flawlessly for decades, yet never fired in aggression. Pilots ran through simulations one last time. Soldiers composed letters to families they might never see again. In the fighter bay of the carrier Guangard, Wing Commander Su Jin gathered her pilots. At 35, her hands bore scars from a training accident years ago. She had flown 200 combat missions against pirates and raiders, but this, she knew, would be different. This would be true war. "Listen up," she commanded, her voice calm and firm. "You've trained for this moment your entire careers. The enemy believes we are feeble. The enemy believes we are afraid. Tomorrow, we will reveal exactly how mistaken they are." One of her younger pilots, a woman named Hannah, raised her hand. "Commander, how many enemy ships are we facing?" "Intel suggests one, a mere diplomatic vessel." "And how many ships do we have?" Su Jin smiled. It was not a benign smile. "Enough." While the human fleet assembled, the Valoran Dominion awaited with escalating impatience. Overseer Maltic had issued his ultimatum 40 hours prior, yet the humans remained silent. This irked him. Most species capitulated within the first day. Some implored for mercy. A few attempted negotiations, offering resources and thralls in exchange for their lives, but the humans said nothing. Their ambassador had received the message, followed by an unsettling stillness. Maltic stood on his ship's bridge, watching the planet below. His second-in-command, a younger Valoran named Tessic, approached with a report. "Overseer, our sensors are detecting anomalous energy signatures in the outer system." "What kind of signatures?" "Unknown. They appear briefly, then vanish. It could be natural phenomena." Maltic dismissed him with a clawed hand. "Disregard it. These primitives possess nothing that could threaten us. They are likely attempting to evacuate their leaders." "Should we intercept them?" "No. Let them flee. It will make for a compelling narrative when we report to the Dominion. The great human leaders fleeing in terror from a single Valoran ship." Tess bowed his head, then returned to his post. Yet apprehension gnawed at him. He had scrutinized humans with far more diligence than his superior, poring over decades' worth of intelligence reports compiled by Valoran operatives through clandestine observations. These accounts painted a peculiar image. Humans were unlike other nascent species. They eschewed the internal conflicts common among lesser civilizations. Centuries earlier, they had unified their entire planet under a single governance. Their vessels achieved speeds that defied conventional understanding, and they conceived weaponry no other civilization had conceived. Most remarkably, they remembered. That was perhaps the most unsettling fact. Humans possessed an eidetic memory. 4 decades prior, the Qatari Empire had launched an unprovoked assault on human settlements, incinerating 3 worlds and claiming millions of lives. The humans, however, never forgot. Within 2 years of that attack, the Qatari Empire was no more. Humanity had utterly annihilated it, not merely conquered, but destroyed. They shattered the Qatari fleet, invaded its homeworld, and razed every vestige of Qatari influence. Then they receded into inactivity, remaining within their borders for 60 years, building and preparing. Preparing for what? Tess wondered. Tessic re-examined the sensor readings. Those energy signatures troubled him. They were too regular to be natural, too perfectly arrayed. "Overseer," he began, his voice slow. "Perhaps we should request reinforcements." Maltix chuckled, his scales brightening to a vivid yellow in amusement. "Reinforcements against these creatures? They possess no fleet, Tessic. Our intelligence confirms it. A mere handful of patrol vessels, nothing more. These energy signatures are inconsequential. Cease your worrying and commence preparations for the surrender ceremony. I demand absolute perfection when these humans prostrate themselves before us." Tessic bowed again, remaining silent, but he did not erase the sensor data. Something felt profoundly wrong, a visceral unease he couldn't shake. Far off, concealed behind a gas giant in the system's outer reaches, Admiral Ju reviewed her final fleet tally. 847 warships, 43 carrier groups, 12,000 fighters, and 200,000 soldiers poised for boarding operations. She glanced at the tactical display, which showed the solitary Valoran vessel orbiting New Bizen, one ship against 800. "Fleet status?" she inquired. "All ships confirm readiness," Admiral Dune reported. "Navigation jump coordinates locked. We can be in orbit around New Bizen in 17 minutes. Jizu settled back into her command throne. In 28 hours, the Valoran ultimatum would expire. They anticipated human surrender, dread, supplication, and capitulation. They were about to discover that humanity neither surrendered nor begged. When their progeny, families, or future were imperiled, humanity retaliated with the full ferocity of a species that had learned a harrowing lesson long ago. Never again. These words were etched above the entrance to every military academy on Earth. Never again would humanity be found wanting. Never again would extraterrestrial empires immolate human worlds while humanity stood by helplessly. "Transmit final confirmation to all fleet elements," Ju commanded. "We jump in 6 hours, and inform the Valorans that their 72 hours are about to dramatically diminish." The storm was brewing, and its breaking was imminent. On the surface of New Bizen, the populace waited. They had been exhorted to remain composed, to trust their government. Yet, composure was difficult when an alien warship hung in the sky, a silver blade poised to descend. Governor Yunji traversed the capital's thoroughfares, striving to project a fortitude she did not possess. 50 years old, a former Marine with 2 decades of service before entering politics, she had battled pirates, rescued hostages, and endured trials that would shatter most individuals. But she had never confronted anything comparable to this. 400,000 lives depended on the events of the next few hours. She entered the government building to find Ambassador Taiho awaiting her in the conference room. He sat at the lengthy table, a cup of tea before him, appearing as serene as if it were an ordinary day. "Ambassador," Yunji began, "the people are terrified. They need to know what's transpiring." "What's transpiring is that we're waiting," Taiho replied. "Waiting for what?" "The Valorans gave us 72 hours. We have less than 20 remaining. If we don't surrender, then what?" Yunji stared at him. "Then they'll obliterate us all. A single ship possesses enough firepower to annihilate every city on this planet." Taiho took a deliberate sip of his tea. "Governor, do you trust the United Earth Navy?" "Of course. But what can they accomplish? Even if they dispatched aid, it wouldn't arrive in time. And the Valorans have 40 ships in adjacent systems. If we retaliate, they'll simply send more. Taiho offered a cryptic smile, brimming with unspoken knowledge. Sit down, Governor. Allow me to recount a tale. Yunji sat. She had no superior options. 60 years ago, Taiho commenced, the Qatari Empire attacked humanity without warning. They incinerated 3 worlds. Millions perished. My wife was among them. I apologize. I wasn't aware. After the conflict, humanity made a solemn vow. Never again would we be caught defenseless. Never again would we passively witness the demise of our people. So, for 60 years, we built, quietly, secretly. We constructed the most formidable military force this galaxy has ever witnessed. A chill traced Yunji's spine. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting that Saka is already here. They merely await the opportune moment. In orbit, Overseer Maltic's patience frayed. The deadline approached, yet the humans remained unresponsive. He had anticipated their pleas by now, their tears, their pledges, their desperate offers of surrender. Instead, he had received only silence. Contact their government again, he ordered. Inform them they have 1 hour to capitulate, or we initiate bombardment. His communication officers transmitted the message. Seconds later, a reply arrived. It was not what anyone expected. The response was a single image, a human hand making a gesture with 1 digit extended. Maltix failed to grasp the specific meaning, but the insulting intent was undeniably clear. His scales darkened to a furious crimson. "Ready the armaments," he snarled. "These creatures have chosen death." "Overseer!" Tessic cried from the sensor station. "Multiple energy signatures appearing in the outer system." "What kind of signatures?" "Jump portals, hundreds of them." Maltix rushed to the sensor display. What he beheld chilled his very core. The void was tearing open, not in 1 location, not in 10, but in hundreds simultaneously. Points of light materialized in the darkness, expanding into swirling vortices of energy. And from these circles, ships emerged. Human ships. They materialized in flawless formations, wave after wave. Destroyers, cruisers, battleships, carriers. They arrived in numbers that should have been impossible. No young species possessed this many vessels. No empire in the galaxy commanded such a fleet. "Count them," Maltix whispered. "Count them now." Tessic's hands trembled as he operated the sensors. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. 847 combat vessels, 43 carrier groups, fighter launchers detected from all carriers. I count 12,000 individual fighter craft. Maltix stared at the display, his scales now a ghastly white with terror. "That's impossible! Our intelligence indicated they had no fleet." "Our spies," Tessic said quietly, "our spies were mistaken. Very, very mistaken." On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Ju stood before the main view screen, watching the Valoran vessel grow larger. It was beautiful, she conceded, like a silver fish swimming solitary in an abyss of black. A silverfish encircled by sharks. "Open a channel," she commanded. "All frequencies channel open." Admiral Jizu adjusted her uniform and spoke, her voice resonating across the void like thunder. "Valoran vessel, this is Admiral Ju of the United Earth Navy. You have menaced human civilians. You have menaced our children, our families, our future. You anticipated our negotiation. You anticipated our surrender." She paused, allowing her words to sink in. You were wrong. On the bridge, every officer stood motionless. The tactical display showed their single ship enveloped by a sea of pulsating red enemy signatures. 800 warships, 12,000 fighters, weapons systems charging on every vessel. You have 60 seconds to power down your armaments and surrender unconditionally, Ju continued. This is not a negotiation. This is not a discussion. This is the sole warning you will be afforded. If you do not comply, we will obliterate you. If you attempt to flee, we will apprehend you. If you attempt to engage us, you will perish. Multix finally found his voice, a mere croak. This is Overseer Multix of the Valoran Dominion. You cannot threaten us. We have 40 ships in nearby systems. If you attack us, our empire will... Your empire will do nothing, Ju cut him off. Because if your empire dispatches those 40 vessels, I will destroy them as well. And then I will come for your homeworld. Is that what you desire, Overseer? Do you wish to be the catalyst for the demise of your entire species? Silence. Complete, absolute silence. On New Bizan, the people gazed at the sky. They could discern lights appearing amidst the stars, hundreds of lights encircling the silver alien ship like wolves around a wounded deer. Governor Yunji stood beside Ambassador Taiho, observing through a telescope. My God, she breathed. How many ships is that? Enough, Taiho simply stated. It's enough. He raised his cup of tea in a subtle toast toward the firmament. Welcome to the real humanity, Overseer. We hope you survive the experience. Overseer Multix had 60 seconds to surrender. He squandered 50 of them, staring at his tactical display in utter disbelief. His mind refused to accept the reality his eyes presented. 800 enemy ships, 12,000 fighters, weapons glowing with lethal light, all trained on his solitary vessel. He had served as an overseer for 2 centuries, conquering 12 worlds. He had never suffered a defeat, never encountered an adversary capable of challenging him. The Dominion reigned as the paramount power in that sector of the galaxy. For the inaugural time in his protracted existence, Multix experienced a profound terror. Overseer, we must surrender, Tessic urged with a sense of urgency. There is no dishonor in it. No. The word escaped Multix before he could restrain it. Pride spoke where sagacity should have prevailed. We are valor. We do not yield to primitives. But, sir, all vessels in proximate systems are converging on my location and powering their weapons. We shall impart upon these creatures the consequence of defying the Dominion. Tessic closed his eyes, instantly comprehending their impending demise. Aboard the Indomitable, Captain Doyan observed the Valor vessel's armaments activate, unfazed. He had dedicated years to studying alien psychology. Pride manifested identically across all species. Admiral, their weapons are charging. I observe it, Jizu replied, her voice composed, almost mournful. Some beings only grasp lessons through arduous means. All ships, release weapons, annihilate them. The void erupted in a flash of brilliance. 800 human warships discharged their munitions in unison. Streams of cerulean and white coherent energy traversed the darkness. Thousands of missiles launched, trailing fire in their wake. Railgun projectiles, traveling at fractions of light speed, remained imperceptible until impact. The ship endured for a mere 4 seconds. Its shields flared intensely, then collapsed entirely. The hull buckled under impacts from myriad directions. Internal detonations ravaged its core sections. Atmosphere vented into space, as plumes of frigid gas. And then it was over. Where the formidable Valoran diplomatic craft had been, only debris remained. Fragments of silver hull spun through the void, reflecting the distant starlight. Admiral Jizu surveyed the wreckage with an unreadable expression. "Scanning for survivors now," Doyan reported. "Detecting escape pods. Approximately 30 individuals evacuated the vessel. Retrieve them. They will possess valuable intelligence." She addressed her tactical officer. "Status on the enemy reinforcements?" 38 warships just completed their jump. They are forming up 50,000 kilometers off our starboard bow. Only 38? The overseer claimed 40. 2 of their ships experienced jump drive malfunctions. They will not reach us for several hours. Jizu permitted herself a faint smile. "Then we shall conclude this swiftly. Fleet, new directives. Carrier groups, launch all remaining fighters. Destroyer screen, establish a protective perimeter around our carriers. Battleship divisions, advance and engage." The human fleet executed its maneuvers with a precision born of extensive training. Every captain understood their function. Every crew member comprehended the strategy. They had rehearsed this scenario countless times in simulations. Now, they were enacting it for real. Wing Commander Sajin led Hawk Squadron through the maelstrom of combat. Her fighter, agile and swift, weaved through enemy weapon fire like a leaf caught in a tempest. Around her, her pilots maintained a flawless formation. "Hawk Squadron, target the lead cruiser's engines. Prevent them from coordinating their fleet." The fighters plunged towards the colossal Valoran warship. Enemy interceptors ascended to meet them, yet human pilots were superior in training and commanded swifter craft. Sujin's weapons discharged, transforming 2 interceptors into expanding clouds of gas. "Direct hit on engines," Hannah reported. "Target is dead in space." "Excellent. Proceed to the next one." Concurrently, the Warang Special Forces were cementing their renown. Lieutenant Minho stood within the airlock of a boarding shuttle, observing the enemy cruiser loom larger through the viewport. His 12-member team, clad in heavy combat armor, bore weaponry specifically designed for ship-to-ship engagements. "Remember," he transmitted via radio, "these Valorans have never encountered humans in close-quarters combat. They perceive us as weak. They believe us to be frail." He drew back the charging handle of his rifle. "Let us rectify that misapprehension." The shuttle breached the cruiser's hull. Armored doors ruptured inwards, and the Warang surged into the enemy vessel. Alarms shrieked. Emergency lights cast crimson hues upon the corridors. The first Valoran guard rounded a corner, confronting Mino directly. The alien was towering, with silver scales and talons capable of tearing through steel. He had spent decades honing his fighting skills. It was inconsequential. Minho moved with fluid grace, swift, seamless, and lethal. His rifle fired twice, and the guard collapsed. Behind him, his team efficiently navigated the corridors with deadly precision. The Valorans aboard the cruiser had never witnessed anything comparable. They were warriors, undeniably, but they were accustomed to engaging adversaries who feared them. Enemies who hesitated, who fled, who implored for mercy. Humans exhibited none of these traits. The Hang fought with frigid accuracy, systematically clearing compartment after compartment. They conserved ammunition. They displayed no emotion. They merely advanced, relentless as an incoming tide. Within 10 minutes, they reached the bridge. The cruiser's captain stood, encircled by his officers, weapons raised in desperate defiance. Minho regarded him through his helmet's visor. "Surrender," he declared. "You have been defeated." The captain's scales flickered with hues Minho did not recognize, likely fear or fury. It held no bearing. "We are Valoran," the captain spat. "We do not." Yes, you do not surrender. I have heard it before." Minho elevated his rifle. "Final opportunity." The captain wavered. Around him, his officers gradually lowered their weapons. They had witnessed the fate of those who resisted. They had seen their crew mown down like grass. Finally, the captain relinquished his weapon. "A sagacious decision," Minho stated. "Secure the bridge. This vessel now belongs to humanity." The engagement lasted a total of 11 minutes. When it concluded, 38 ships had been annihilated. 2 had yielded after their crews mutinied against their reckless captains. None had escaped to forewarn the Dominion of the formidable opposition they had encountered. Admiral Jizu surveyed the wreckage from her command throne. The tactical display showed ubiquitous green friendly markers. Not a single human vessel had been lost. "Casualty report," she commanded. 12 wounded across the fleet," Dunn responded. "No fatalities." "No fatalities. 12 wounded against 40 enemy warships." Jizu nodded slowly. "Transmit a message to the Valoran Dominion. Utilize the codes we acquired from the initial vessel. Ensure they receive full sensor recordings of this battle." "What should the message convey, Admiral?" Jizu rose and approached the view screen. Below her, the planet New Bison rotated serenely, oblivious to its recent near destruction. "Inform them that humanity does not negotiate with those who menace our progeny. Inform them that this fleet will remain here until we possess a formal peace treaty signed by their emperor. And inform them that if they dispatch another vessel within 50 light-years of any human colony, I will personally lead this fleet to their homeworld and demonstrate to them the true nature of devastation." She turned back to her captain. "Ensure they comprehend, Doyan. Ensure the entire galaxy comprehends. Humanity is done concealing itself. Humanity is done being underestimated. From this day forward, anyone who imperils our people will confront the full might of our retaliation." Doyan saluted. "Yes, Admiral. I will ensure they comprehend." And across the galaxy, empires previously unaware of humanity's existence began to take notice. The sensor recordings reached the Valoran homeworld within 3 days. The Emperor observed them in silence, flanked by his advisors and generals. They witnessed their mighty warships torn asunder like paper. They observed the human fleet stretching across the void like an endless rampart of steel. They saw Overseer Multix's ship detonate within the first 4 seconds of combat. When the recording concluded, no one uttered a word. The Emperor remained seated on his golden throne, staring at the blank screen for an extended period. "How many ships did we lose?" he finally inquired. 40, Your Majesty. All of them." "And the humans?" "None destroyed. 12 injured crew members. That is all." The Emperor closed his eyes. 3,000 years. The Valoran Dominion had governed this sector for 3 millennia. They had conquered empires, raised civilizations, bent entire species to their will. And now, in 11 minutes, an unknown species had utterly humiliated them. "Dispatch a peace delegation," he said quietly. "Offer whatever terms they desire. We will not engage these humans." "Your Majesty, the populace will demand retribution. Our honor." "Our honor is meaningless if our species is extinct." The Emperor opened his eyes, and they were filled with an emotion his advisors had never before witnessed. Fear. "You saw the recordings. They possess 800 warships. 800! We have 200 in our entire fleet, and their ships are swifter. Their weapons are mightier, and their soldiers are—" He could not articulate the sentence. He lacked the words for what he had perceived. "Dispatch the delegation," he repeated. "Today." On New Bizen, the festivities had been ongoing for 2 days. People danced in the thoroughfares. Families who had sought refuge in shelters emerged to behold clear skies and a lone human fleet in orbit, safeguarding them. Children waved at the stars, knowing that somewhere above, heroes watched over them. Governor Yunji presided over a ceremony on the steps of the Capitol building. Admiral Jizu descended from orbit in a shuttle, accompanied by Wing Commander Sujin, Lieutenant Minho, and 100 other officers and soldiers who had participated in the battle. The crowd cheered so vociferously that Yunji could barely hear her own voice as she delivered her address. But it did not matter. The words were less significant than the sentiment, the feeling of security, the feeling of belonging to something grander. After the ceremony, Yunji discovered Admiral Jizu standing alone, gazing at the sky. "You saved us," Yunji stated. 400,000 individuals are alive because of you." Jizu shook her head. "I performed my duty, nothing more." "It was more than duty. I witnessed the recordings. You could have negotiated. You could have allowed the Valoran to seize our resources in exchange for our lives. Instead, you brought 800 ships." "Humanity does not negotiate with those who threaten children." Jizu's voice was resolute. "That is not a subject for discussion. That is not a subject for debate. Someone threatens our civilians, we respond. That is the established protocol." Yunji remained silent for a moment. "The other dominions will get wind of this. They'll recognize our might now. Indeed, some may attempt to band together against us." "Yes. Are you apprehensive?" Ju pivoted to face her. For the first time, Yunji observed a flicker of warmth in those typically frigid eyes. "Allow me to convey something, Governor. For 6 decades, humanity has been preparing for this juncture. We constructed vessels. We trained combatants. We forged weaponry. But more significantly, we honed our understanding. We gleaned insights from the Qatari catastrophe. We comprehended the repercussions of fragility in a cosmos teeming with predators." She gestured towards the heavens, toward the Armada, suspended in orbit like a bulwark. "Those vessels above, they are not for subjugation. They are not for eminence or dominion. They are for safeguarding. Each solitary one exists for a solitary purpose. To guarantee that the events of 40 years past never recur. To ensure that no human infant ever witnesses their world consumed by flames while we stand impotent. And if the other dominions coalesce against us, then we shall construct more vessels." Ju smiled, and this time it was almost tender. "Humanity does not yield, Governor. We do not capitulate. We adapt. We flourish. We surmount. That is our essence. It is what we have perpetually accomplished." Within his chambers overlooking the festivities, Ambassador Taiho sat with his aide, Yuna, observing the throngs below. He held a fresh cup of tea, and for the first time in weeks, he seemed truly placid. "The Valoran Emperor dispatched a peace delegation," Yuna reported. "They arrived an hour ago. They are prepared to ink a non-aggression pact and offer reparations for the threat against our settlement." "Good. That's a commencement. There's more. The Keelan Confederation and the Marsh Alliance have both sought diplomatic meetings. They wish to establish formal ties with humanity." Taiho nodded slowly. "They are apprehensive. They witnessed our actions toward the Valorans, and now they wish to ensure we bear no ill will toward them." "Are we resentful of them?" "No, we never sought adversaries. We simply desired to exist in serenity." He took a sip of his tea. But peace necessitates fortitude. The galaxy reveres fortitude, and now they discern what our fortitude embodies. Una settled opposite him. She appeared weary but gratified, like someone who had concluded a very protracted race. "Sir, may I pose a query?" "Certainly." After the Qatari massacre, when we commenced constructing the fleet, did anyone truly believe we would ever deploy it? Taiho remained silent for a prolonged moment. "Some of us hoped we wouldn't," he finally articulated. "Some of us hoped that we could live quietly, cultivate our worlds, raise our progeny in peace. But we knew better. We understood that sooner or later, someone would test us. Someone would regard humanity and perceive quarry." He placed his cup down and gazed out at the jubilation, at the dancing multitudes and the mirthful children, and the vibrant banners fluttering in the breeze. The Valorans were that someone. They looked at us and saw vulnerability. They saw a minor colony on a minuscule planet and presumed they could seize it with a single ship. They believed we would grovel. His eyes grew distant, recalling a spouse who had perished decades ago, a world that had been incinerated by alien fire. They learned differently, and now the entire galaxy knows. Humanity does not grovel. Humanity does not supplicate. When someone jeopardizes our populace, we do not dispatch envoys. He rose and went to the window, watching the sun descend over a city that had nearly been annihilated. "We send everything." Beneath him, the festivities persisted. Children laughed, families embraced, soldiers and civilians danced together beneath a sky replete with guardian stars. And in the vacuum beyond, the human fleet maintained its silent vigil. 800 vessels, 12,000 fighters, 200,000 combatants. The most formidable armada in the annals of the galaxy, standing guard over a solitary, diminutive world, poised to answer the summons, poised to safeguard their own, poised as they would eternally be poised to reveal to the cosmos the authentic visage of humanity. Not the visage of diplomats and scholars and Pacific explorers, the visage of warriors who would immolate the very galaxy to safeguard the individuals they cherished. The Volans had misjudged, they had been mistaken, and they would never, ever forget it.